know, when we think about a mortgage and the life cycle of a mortgage, I can tell you guys statistically 95% of the professionals that are in this space are focused on owner-occupied loan transactions. There is one product in particular that I spend a lot of time educating on that I will share just a snippet because it is very not mainstream, okay? Banking and mortgage. By combining these two loans together, we can extraordinarily reduce the amount of interest by doing zero different. Our incomes, our spending habits, nothing changes.
So I want to welcome our lovely Caeli. I am so happy today because I have an amazing woman. She's not just behind the desk, she's personally owned up to 42 rental properties, giving her a dual lens as both lender and investor. And not only that, she mastered the art of turning rigid mortgage rules into personal freedom. And I get it. She also has an amazing history because she inherited a boutique lending, but she has put a stamp that says Caeli Ridge. This conversation is going to be magnetic, authentic, very original, and we're gonna dig in. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so honored that you're sitting across us, today for our audience. How are you?
Thank you, Jen. I'm so good. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I was thinking about this morning, obviously, as I was getting ready, and I have to I want to share with your listeners and your viewers. So I have gotten really fierce boundaries. Okay, as a fellow woman, I know that I can share this with you. And this morning, I chose fitness over fresh hair. So for any of you that are seeing me for the first time, I wouldn't normally be in my workout gear fresh from working out, but I knew Jen would get it. And as women, I know that we are empowered to meet us where we are and understand what that is and how it works. I'm 53 years old, and I find more and more opportunities where that is the most important thing to me. So thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Oh my God. And I love that. I mean, I think this is part of making it real and authentic. I remember one time I came up with a hair like this, and the girls were used to see me with my hair done with all makeup. And for the first time, they say, Jen, you look normal. And I'm like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And he said, you don't have everything put together. It just hit me. It hit me because I love to get my hair done and get all pretty and all that. But to your point, we have to establish boundaries. And the more that we get comfortable with ourselves and our femininity and our maturity, the more we learn how important it is to put our priorities first, because we have to take care of ourselves first. And then we can take care of everybody else. If we don't protect that energy, and that's something I'm learning and working on, it's very, very, very hard that we serve people in the best way. And that includes friends, families, clients, and everything else. So thank you for being so you.
So true. Yeah. And it's our job to demonstrate for the younger generation, right? I mean, there's so much freedom that comes as I'm getting older. We won't go off on a tangent, okay? I promise this will be the last comment about it. But there's so much freedom in really owning yourself and recognizing your worth, and it doesn't just have to be on the surface. And I've got a 22-year-old daughter and her friends, and just the younger generation. I really am empowered to share some of those lessons with them so that they can maybe get there a little quicker than I did.
I mean, it's part of who you are. It's part of who you are. And I love the fact that you're mentioning of passing this learning, these lessons to future generations, which it also leads me to your business too, that we can chat more about this. But to your point, it's so important that we start shifting the environment, shifting how we teach our kids, our daughters, our boys, or however, right, is nowadays. But it's so important so we break through these patterns and understand that just because we inherit stuff, it doesn't mean that it has to be done in the same way. And it brings us to you, right? You actually step into your father's legacy and shape Rich Lending Group into a bold boutique leader. So, and I want to talk about that. So I know you have so many interviews out there, and I'm like, I'm going to ask her the questions that no one asked her this time.
Okay.
So how did your values and your family values and your own investor instincts, because normally you don't find this, right, in the mortgage industry, but your own investor instincts converge to define the culture, the client's experience, and the purpose of Rich Lending Group?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it was far easier than maybe it might appear or sound, because with real estate investing, I'm going to start there, and then I'll kind of layer in some of the experience, like client experience, et cetera. But overall, as an investor, it comes down to math. Right? I know that you got to use your gut sometimes, and you've got to use your instincts and your feelings. As women, it's like it's our sixth sense. We have it. It's part of us. Okay. But overall, when I'm talking about an investment for myself or even my clients, there is a fairly tried and true formula that if you plug in the data points, you're going to get the result, right? The math is the math, and the math won't lie. So as long as you understand what your why is and what your buy box is, what your goals are, what your expected returns are, you're going to know. Okay, that would be the first piece. That would be the first answer to the question. Let me segue into backing up a little bit. I chose to go into an industry that is heavily, heavily male dominated. Okay. And by no means am I going off the rails here to be a he woman man hater club at all. I love our men. I'm here for them and supporting, and it really, we need to, as men and women, I think we need to come back together and appreciate our differences. But point being is lending and finance is heavily dominated male. I mean, heavily, like 95%, very few women in my position. So I was blessed with a good filter. I was able to let a
I
lot of
love
stuff
it.
roll off my back. And I had a really good mentor, my father, who, really brought me up and told me I had to get my nose bloodied, and I did. And I earned my stripes, man. And I was in there. And while, a lot of people from the outside looking in might think that there was nepotistic stuff going on, he was harder on me than anybody. So I really had to pay my dues. And in doing that, I learned valuable lessons that taught me, how do I want to be treated as a consumer, right? An investor, because my model, lending, let's talk about mortgage really quickly. The mortgage industry, to the process of getting a loan from the day that you pick up the phone, you call a lender, you hit the button on submit your application, to when you're closing on that loan, there is a lot going on in between. And not all lenders, like anything, are created equal. I would argue even that the loan process itself is nobody's favorite pastime activity. Okay. They don't love the vials of blood and the DNA samples and the repeat requests for pay stubs as they expire and all that stuff. Nobody, wakes up in the morning and thinks, I can't wait to get my pre-approval, my pre-qualification work done. Okay. So knowing that my unique niche in investment, right, we're fully functional, we can do everything, but we really put a lot of attention on investors. And having had that experience as an investor, I knew I didn't want and what I did want as a consumer. And knowing how to look at the deal based on what my clients' intentions and goals are, it was easy enough for the pieces to fall into place. I have always worked coming from a place of abundance. I'm never going to be scarcity. So for me, it was all about openness and transparency and education. I think Ridge is one of Ridge's real value adds as a company is the education that we provide to our clients. It's a lot of one-on-one work that I do. It's actually my favorite part of the job, where I really try to understand what it is they're wanting to get out of real estate, right? Really, what do you want in a year or in 10 years? And then we try to work the problem backwards, plant those seeds, and come up with the roadmap that gets them there with the most user-friendly experience that we can. Now, let me preface and say one more thing before I shut up on this, okay? This is the loan process, man.
Yeah.
It's imperfect. It's imperfect in general. I try to remove as much brain damage as I can, but anybody that's going to be listening to this should know that there's going to be some barrier for entry in documentation or timeline or whatever. So I don't want to put myself too far up on that pedestal, just to say that we really do our very best to make the experience as succinct and clear as possible, and provide as much value as we can.
I think you nail it. And oh my God, there's so many things I want to ask you, but I think that something I want to point out, and Shaylee, I think I did a lot of due diligence because I know you personally. We have exchanged knowledge, communication, but I wanted to know what was happening in the market and what was happening with people and how your company was different. Because I really wanted to see, I wanted people to see what I see in regards to this. And something that shocked me and reading reviews, checking out different things is, as you mentioned, this is crystal clear. Numbers are numbers. Underwriting can often feel like a what I call a cold process, right? Because it's just numbers on a spreadsheet. You get what you get. And you build tight disciplined systems for underwriting, asset evaluation, education, and lending flow. And still, one of the things I love about your company, your investors walk away feeling seen, understood, and empowered to make decision. And that's not common in this industry. So that's something I was like really digging. And I think you tap into this a little bit. Besides education, how do you embed the emotional intelligence into processes that are traditionally so transactional?
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate you saying that very much because my life's work has kind of been about that. Let me start by kind of setting the stage for those that may not know. When we think about a mortgage and the life cycle of a mortgage, I can tell you guys statistically 95% of the professionals that are in this space, whether it be an underwriter or a processor or an appraiser, doctor, whatever position they play, 90+% of them are focused on owner-occupied loan transactions. Okay? Owner-occupied loans and non-owner occupied loans, primary residence and rental properties could not be more different when we're talking about how they get underwritten, the qualification requirements, the process. I mean, from stem to stern, very different. So when you think about that in logical terms, let's say that there's several, God, I don't even know, maybe several 100,000 professionals in the mortgage industry nationwide. The vast majority of those people only understand the owner occupied. So for us, the modality and the challenge was going to be is to really understand, right? Really deeply understand all of the nuance of underwriting guidelines as it applies to a whole broad spectrum of loan products, by the way. So I probably should have led with this. We're not a one size fits all. We have an extremely diverse menu, I like to say, of loan programs, from the Fannie Freddies to DSCR, asset depletion, bank statement loans, ground up construction, first lien HELOCs, right? You get the point. There's a lot going on there. So really understanding all of them from an investor's perspective and then providing people the why behind the how. For me, I want the details, right? That's just me. Okay. So maybe just organically I got lucky because I want to know, I want to look under the hood. And I guess I feel like most people are going to want to see that too. So taking the time to really educate them. And the reason that they're not able to get that on the open market is because, one, maybe they're coming from scarcity and they don't want everyone to know what they know. That's not me. Two, they just don't have the information because the vast majority of our industry is owner occupied. They just don't know it. It's very nuanced, very different. So I feel like it happened in a organic way because I want to know the underlying details. I want to understand, how does the underwriter look at my Schedule E? Is depreciation added back, or can I claim this? Or can I get aggressive with my tax deduction over here without it impeding my qualification over there? What kind of assets do I need to have once I've amassed this many properties? All of these different things, they're not dear Google searches. You're not going to find them. And if you do find answers, they're probably outdated, not relevant to the question, or just dang wrong. So I think that was the question you were asking. I think I answered it, but overall, I think that it's just born from my own desire to want to understand, and then just naturally wanting people to have the same information because you can't get it easily elsewhere.
Yes. And I think you nail it. You mentioned it, like that emotional intelligence comes with awareness of information that allows investors to make decisions. And I will say that you somehow demystifies what often is treated what I call the black box, right?
Yeah.
Walking through the economics of mortgage lending, unpacking the fee structures. That was the first, when I spoke with you for the first time, you were the first person that talked to me about how points were charged when. And for the first time, I understood the differences between lenders and their fee structure, how they package things. And why the iconic 30-year fixed loan exists, right? And some of the challenges in the upcoming cycles too, you help me think that way. And I really appreciate that, sharing with you, because it gave me a lot of empowerment to also make decisions, right? This is the right investment for me.
And ask the right questions. Yeah.
Correct. And in fact, one of the things that was born from these conversations and talking to other lenders, Caeli, and probably I haven't told you this, I create this Spark framework where it's focused in all of these statements and discipline on how we make decisions about investing. And it also had the social impact side, right? But it includes some of the things that you taught me that helped me structure the deals how I wanted, even when I was raising capital for them. So because then I needed to understand, in case we needed to refinance or leverage better that debt, guess what? Now I know exactly what a person who works with investors will charge, how it works, how the process works. And it was like a mind-blowing thing for me. So I wanted to let you know that, because I haven't tell you that portion. So now I have a interesting question, right? So, and this is more personal. When you're underwriting for your own portfolio as an investor, do you approach the analysis different than when you are underwriting as a lender? And where do those perspectives overlap and where do they diverge?
That's a very good question. That's another new one. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before. The answer is absolutely it's different. Underwriting is defined. We know exactly what those underwriting boxes look like, whether it be Fannie Freddie or a DSCR, whatever the loan product is, the structure in terms of what has to happen for this loan, this deal to close, to qualify, is very well defined. I mean, there's instances where there could be not a gray area, but something that might be given on exception, right? With compensating factors. There can be some nuance there, but otherwise it is what it is, right? These are the different boxes, and we know what those look like. For myself, in vetting a deal that I'm looking at, I'm going to focus largely on diversification for my portfolio, knowing what I have, knowing what I expect it to generate. And from my wins and losses over 25 years, I've got plenty of both. I know that I want to take risks over here and maybe not so much over there. So it's night and day between vetting for underwriting and then my own purposes.
I imagine that. That's why I wanted to ask you
Yeah.
that, because it's so different. I mean, even when I'm underwriting and my syndication deals, Caeli, it's so different than when I am working on my own deal, right? I'm a little bit more, we'll say, liberal and risk taker with my own money, but knowing that I'm bringing money to investors, I have to think differently, and I get a little bit more into the traditional side.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, you're working with somebody else's livelihood, right? Somebody else's money, not your money, and your risk tolerances are going to be different and based on your age and right. If you're just getting started versus you're in retirement, there's so many different variables and modalities there that you have to consider that there's no way they could be every single time it's going to be different, right? Not just underwriting in the deal, but the different underwriting and the different deals. They're always going to have,
And even the asset type. One of the deep conversations we have with investors is when we're talking about financial criteria or investing criteria. A lot of women, especially, it's like, what are you talking about? It's like, okay, this is going to be a fun conversation. And to your point, it's like, I always tell people, tell me if today was the day that you were going to lose it all, what are you willing to lose? And people look at me, no, I'm being real, right?
Yeah.
And how much of that you will be okay and able to sleep tomorrow? Tell me. And it's not the ideal case. And we start reverse engineering that, and they get to the point, this is how I feel comfortable. This is the kind of criteria I want. And it gets fun too sometimes, right? But it also makes them think in a different way, because to your point, I prefer for them to be more educated and make a decision with confidence than, regret their decisions. And that comes with education.
That's exactly right. I just want to dovetail on that, because that's what I'm here to do. You know what I mean? I guess we sell mortgages, but I've never sold anybody anything in my life. I am here to provide a service. Obviously, I'm very clear about what that is, what it entails, what it costs, but I'm here to provide information, right? Education, so that these clients that we hope to cultivate and retain for a long, long time can make the most informed decision. Similar to what you do, Jen, the information, there's so much out there. There's so much out there, almost too much, right? It's going to be analysis paralysis in many cases. But as it relates to coming back to lending, it's not easily, there's a lot out there, but it's not applicable more often than not. So I really want to be that advocate for them, new and seasoned investors, that does give them that access that they wouldn't have otherwise. So yeah.
Yeah, and right now there's a lot of fear. Let's
Mm.
call it what it is, uncertainty and so much noise in the market. And I see it making investors second guess themselves. And especially if they are not like anchored in a clear investing criteria and solid fundamentals, which, as you mentioned, education will be critical so they don't have to second guess themselves. And what is pretty interesting for me, historically, right, these moments are often the best times to invest. And if, as an investor, let me point that out, if as an investor you can operate with what I call the second level of thinking and see beyond the headlines, because that doesn't mean that how you used to underwrite, and this is where understanding how the lenders do this helped me to underwrite in a what I call like a pro in a different way, because you guys have been doing it for so long. You have seen the cycle, the markets, and you know how the market reacts. This is pretty important for investors to learn with people like you and make solid decisions. But although a lot of people love to say that investing it's cold and it's based on numbers, there's also an emotional factor, right? Yes, we validate with numbers, right? And I always say this, as women, we have that little instinct that if we ignore it, we get in trouble.
Absolutely.
We have to look at the numbers. The numbers are the direction. But as a women, we have to take advantage of those gifts that we have developed. And to your point, some of the guys haven't had that chance. Some of them have them, but very few. As women, that's why we are better investors. And this is not me. This is in the stats, Fidelity studies, and many others.
Is it really?
Outperform.
I didn't know that. Are you kidding?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, 20%. Our investment outperformed men's investment by 20%.
No shit.
Yes. And it's still, we get like 2% of venture capital.
Huh.
So that's why I'm in this mission about teaching women how to move capital, whether passive investment or raising capital. How do you do this in the right way? It just breaks my brains. It's like, how is this possible that we make better decisions and still, we're not getting here? And even if we do a little mistake, we apologize 100 times, while the guys, they don't even apologize. They just keep going. And I think we can learn from both sides, right? I think that there's going to be a beautiful balance that can come from that. But as a women, we need to step up. So let me ask you about this. So in your experience, what emotional barriers do real estate investors most often face, like in a market like this? Right? Like fear and imposter syndrome, which I think that might be more towards women, right? Or who knows, overwhelm. And how do you, I know you love to teach, so let's, not as a coach, but as a lender, how you help them or help guide them past those blocks toward more confidence and clear decisions? Because that's how I felt when I first talked to you. So I'm like, I'm going to ask her this question.
Well, I think you're right. I think fear is probably at the top. The top of the list is what is going to be the barrier for entry for most people, especially women, right? Because this is not an area in which we have been celebrated for historically. We're celebrated for a lot of other things that I think we're starting to reject a little bit, and really wanting to do some deep dives in here. How will I support women? I am equal opportunity. I want to give education to everybody. However, I will say that for me personally, there is something special about empowering and working with women, because I'm a woman and I'm not going to apologize for it. I love it. Thank you for allowing me to be here and having this opportunity to speak. So what I'm going to do for them, I think, is we're really going to just take our time and break it down. Uncovering some of what I have found might be pitfalls. Let's just talk about a buy and hold strategy, just as an example. Okay. Property management, I don't think is talked about enough. So spending some time and really peeling back some of the layers It doesn't have to be a quick fix. And I think women are smart enough to know that this can be a slow burn progression, but that fear it doesn't have to be that needless, absolute end all stop. It's just about gathering the information, putting it into a linear space, and feeling comfortable in knowing the information so that when you're out there making decisions, you've already done this work. You know the answers. You've done the data verify. I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but that math, I guess, applies to, so if we say that the math doesn't lie, right? It's scientific, it doesn't lie. If we take that and kind of apply it to property management, there are still very specific check boxes. Let's say that there's 10 non-negotiables for the property manager that you're going to select in whatever market that you're in, et cetera. There's still kind of a math problem in that. So as long as you've got the primary data tape that says age, price point, mortgage payment, rent, taxes, insurance, property management, is the market friendly, investor friendly? Is this right? Appreciation versus cash flow. There's probably a dozen of them. I'm just throwing them off the cuff. As long as you just look at them individually, go through the steps of educating yourself about what to be looking for, what some of those roadblocks might be, or some of the pitfalls. Here's a pitfall. Let's say that you're looking at an agent that's selling a property and is misrepresenting X, Y, or Z, whatever it is. As long as you've done your due diligence, you know that you can go to that deal with the confidence that says, I already know. I don't need somebody that's from another state that's trying to sell a property and make a commission. I don't have to rely on that data. I've already got it. I know what I'm looking at. So I think that's your question, but that's how I would approach it. I would just take my time. I'd figure out what are their goals today. What do they want to get out of this today? What is the big picture? Is it full replacement using real estate as a passive income? Is it supplementation? Really understanding what it is they're trying to do. And then we just unpack each one of those things. That's how I would attack it.
Yeah, I definitely. And in fact, me using my engineer brain, a lot of time I felt stuck with the data because there was so much data and I'm like, how can I move through this? And I think that those are the moments I start recognizing I'm in analysis paralysis. What do I need to do to create momentum and take action? And I think that was the biggest challenge I have at the moment. And I'm like, I need to stop because what I learned is that action is what helps you create momentum and learn. So, and I was going to make mistakes, but how did I reduce those mistakes was the critical thinking that I needed. And to your point, there's going to be market data. And what I love to do is to study the stats first and confirm with realtors. And I know if it's a good realtor or not, right? Then I also look at the micro market, which a lot of people forget. Like, is this a flat market? What are the factors impacting that market from government to other agencies? And I create a video that point out 13 or 10 out of the 13 factors I look into it, because that helps you make a decision. And then the macro market, the interest rates and the changes in the entire market that can collapse the entire system. And I have a pretty cool question for you. I think you're going to appreciate that. But thank you for answering this, because I think that one of the things I have seen that breaks my heart the most is I have seen brilliant women walk away from extraordinary opportunities because fear got louder than facts. Yeah. And that's why I'm like, okay, we need to look at the facts. And I always tell them, like, you just need to get the truth of what it is and then make the decision. Are you willing to deal with the risks? Is this aligned with your values, your vision? And then you have to have the courage to take the next step. Yeah. So, and I think that's,
I just wrote down risk. Yeah. So, and because I didn't want to forget. So for somebody that's new, right? If we're talking to a newer investor that does have a little bit more of that fear, once you've done it and you've taken that action and you've been able to prove to yourself, okay, this isn't so bad. This isn't so big. It's not bigger than me. I can figure this out. But for someone that's brand new and in that space where fear is kind of overshadowing some of the action steps forward, my advice would be start on the lowest level or end of risk that you can find, right? The higher the return generally, the higher the risk. So you want to kind of back that off a little bit. That's typically where I would tell someone that's just getting their sea legs, right? Just getting started. Some single family residence for $120,000, right? If that's the model, start low and then have a plan, an exit strategy, plan B, maybe even a plan C. And then you've really done everything you can to protect. Is it foolproof? Hell no, it's not foolproof. Could you lose? Yeah, but not nearly as much as you could otherwise. So I just wanted
Yes.
to dovetail on that.
Yeah. And one of the things that, to your point, it's I learned what I call the trifecta game, which is how you turn property into cash or cash into paper. And that have helped me realize what kind of risk I am
Mm,
taking beyond, even if I was new, but I did it by hanging out with the right girls, right? The
mm,
ones that will challenge me, spare me their knowledge, and we will play it and have this fun with it. But one of the things I noticed is that having a support group of women that were willing to exchange information helped me. I always say, like, I borrowed their confidence, right? Because at that moment I didn't feel strong enough
yeah.
to take these steps, and that's what helped me. So that's, as you, I love working with guys, but I am a fan of helping women, because
Yeah.
when I needed that push, they were the ones that pushed me. So
It's in our nature. It's
yes.
just how we're made. It's our DNA.
Yes, and now that you mentioned newbies, because I think this is important, there's a process to scale up, and I think that a lot of people also get scared of this process. And at some point, you personally juggle, I think it was 42 rental properties. What systems, disciplines, or mind shifts allow you to scale successfully? And how did those experiences shape the playbook you now offer to your clients?
Okay, in a couple of ways. So let's start about where I was in my journey. I was young and knew nothing. I knew nothing, right? I was too arrogant to think I could fail, right? I just went out there and I'm just going to go. No one's going to tell me no. In fact, go ahead and tell me no and see what happens, kind of thing, right? I had that mentality, and I hadn't really lost much at that point, so the fear hadn't set in. And additionally, very important to comment is when I was first starting out, it was a very different playing field, very different playing field from the market cycle, the real estate market cycle. I'll fill in the blank there in a second, and the lending platform. You could fog a mirror and get a loan when I started, right? You barely have to have a pulse and you could get a loan back then, versus today. I make that dumb joke of vials of blood and DNA samples, right? You've got all this extra skin in the game. You don't have the same leverage that you had. The underwriting guidelines are far more severe. And then going back to the market cycle, it was all about appreciation when I was first getting in. So for all of those reasons, it was very different. But taking my experience, my losses specifically, I mean, how much do we learn from our wins?
Yeah.
Not much. We
Mhm.
learn from our losses. So 08, 09, 2010. Okay, that was my big learning moment. So for those that are younger and don't remember, so 08, 09, housing and lending crashed, imploded on each other simultaneously. Okay, massive recession. I lost huge. As a result of that very painful time, I was able to reinvent. I was down but not out, kind of thing. Taking those experiences and re-upping for diversification. So, to your question, what I was able to do is really look at where I had been and the mistakes that I had made, utilizing those and finding a way forward. Because I still and always have believed in real estate as a massive lever toward huge financial freedom. I mean, I think many people would argue there's probably isn't another asset class that can be as profoundly impactful without doctorates. And right, you don't need to have, well, you got to have life experience, probably some life experience before you get there, but you know what I'm saying. So utilizing those experiences and finding a way forward was huge for me. And in turning the channel, I was a one-trick pony. I had to come up with other ways in which I could continue to invest and not have the same thing happen again. Having those 42 properties at the height of that acquisition, one, they were very easy to get. Okay. So for me, and I won't bore you guys with this sob story, but when the shit hit the fan, am I allowed to say, is that okay on this? Can I say
You're
the
fine.
SH word? Okay. So when the shit hit the fan, I had all these properties. I was deeply invested in lending. This was my business, my job. I had all of these properties. None of them were cash flowing, by the way. So here's one of the big takeaways that I had. This was an appreciation play. So prior to 08, 09, it was appreciation, unsustainable. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I learned pretty quickly, thank goodness. But all of these properties now had no way to get any new financing on. The housing and the lending imploding on each other simultaneously left me with zero options. I couldn't get any refinances done. I was in lending. I was the lender in this space at the time. We went from unlimited amounts of financing for investors to no more than 4 finance properties, because all the players that were lending before, they were gone, right? They imploded. They got bailouts. They got whatever. Fannie Freddie was the only one left on the block, and they maxed us at 4. Okay. So having those experiences is horrible. I mean, we lost millions and millions of dollars, but being able to use those and find a way back to in the diversification, I'm big on diversification. So you're okay. I'm okay with even now having the core philosophy, but you better have a few other legs under your stool if you're going to survive and weather. Assets are cyclical. Nothing is more true than that of real estate. It's a very cyclical business, and you need to be prepared for what's coming. So I think I'm going to round this all out. In the current environment that we're in, I think that was really what precipitated this line of questioning. Should we be afraid to invest right now? Should we be holding back? Should we be charging forward at full speed? I want more information about the individual and where they are in their life and right. But overall, I honestly, and this is not a soundbite, this is not some sales pitch. It's just not how I am or how how I operate. There's never a bad time to invest in real estate, ever. It's about the real estate and the numbers and that math. So I went off on a tangent there, Jen, but I really think that overall my learning has been through lots of mistakes and finding the right way to do it.
Yeah, no, I think that that's gold. That's gold because, as you mentioned, I learned from my failures the most.
Yeah.
I did have these little discipline thing that I do that even when I win the deal, I am writing what could I have done differently to make the deal better, to handle the things differently. And I always talk to different people too. Hey, I have this situation. How would you handle this? And I keep learning, and I keep this diary that is crazy. If you see this notebook, and I create like a 500 item checklist. But to your point, we learn so much. We have to be willing to lose, yes, maybe money, right? We try not to, but also we have to be willing to use that as an investment opportunity in our lessons. And to your point, we want to do the least amount possible, right? Starting small.
Yeah.
Because I always say this, like, scaling is easy if you're reckless. And I have seen a lot of, and sadly, I don't want to put this there, but I have seen a lot of flippers going in a crazy growth path without considering what will happen if the market shifts. They don't even have, as you mentioned, a plan for cash flow.
That was me 25 years ago.
And I learned that. I saw that. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna learn from the wisdom around me. To your point, it doesn't mean I haven't lost money, because I have lost money in other ways that I'm like, oh my God, seriously, Jen? It's hard if you're disciplined to really scale up. And one of the things that made me think a lot about that, I learned that when I start shifting my own portfolio away from what I call the hottest asset class in 2016, multifamily, because it survived the crash, let's call it that way, not because it wasn't performing. I think, there's always deals, to your point, Caeli. I knew it was performing. I knew there was still deals there, but the data and me thinking in a different way say that the wave will crest, right? It was coming. Maybe I went out a little bit earlier. I don't regret it. And then, to your point, all asset classes are cyclical. You just need to keep your eyes open. And because of the pandemic, a lot of people went away from the hotels, and I just went all in, but I was very specific. I went into extended stay hotels in the economy sector where the fundamentals look more resilient. And I started in 2019, 2018 studying. 2019, 2020, I got my first deal. Then I got into another 3 and all of those. And then suddenly by 2021 or 2022, the Starwood Capital bought extended stay hotels because they saw what I caught up first in regards to the numbers. right? There was an opportunity in the right market. So to your point, we always have to have our eyes open.
Mhm.
And sometimes one of the things I do, I talk to a lot of lenders to figure out what is people taking money out of, right? Is it single family home? How is painting? Because I'm most likely going to go in the opposite direction. And sometimes it's counterintuitive. I still love single family homes. The deal is the deal. You just need to know what price to pay, as you mentioned. So,
Okay.
and build systems that create predictability. Learning this from mortgage underwriting practices,
Yeah.
right? And that has stood the test of time and is still leaving space for what I call evolution of investor identity, right? So I always have fun. But more than anything, too, I want to see what's happening in today's market, right? I have a pretty interesting question. I was just reading about this, I think it was yesterday or this morning. Yesterday. So there is the traditional 30 years fixed mortgage, and I'm gonna do two questions on this one. And I always say it has power and is fragile wings, right? When we have, for example, what emerging innovations, policy shifts, right? When we have all of these policy shifts or structural changes happen, do you see on the horizon something that could be meaningfully reshape, I would say, affordability or access for rental property investors in the next 3 to 5 years?
I'm going to say yes, and it's actually here. There is one product in particular that I spend a lot of time educating on that I will share just a snippet because it is very, very not mainstream. Okay. It couldn't be more different than the 30-year fixed counterpart. And what we've sort of, especially in the United States, we're preconditioned to understand that closed-ended amortized mortgage. Okay. Most of us know what that 30-year fixed product looks like. The product that you are speaking directly about that provides for that extra affordability. Now, it's not for everybody. Let me preface by saying that and I'll explain who it's perfect for and who probably not. But this loan product is referred to as velocity banking or infinity banking. Have you ever heard those terms? Okay, so anybody that's got whole life insurance policies and that kind of thing, you probably will understand this a little bit better. For those of you that have never heard that term, I want to just pause and say, take a breath, take your time. There is a ton to unpack. We're not going to get to it today. Maybe Jen will have me on again and we'll spend more time talking just about this. But there is a concept, and the loan product attached to it is called the all-in-one. Okay, it is a first lien HELOC that is open-ended and revolving. A second ago, I said closed-ended and amortized, right? 30-year fixed, 180, open-ended and revolving. As a result, it's called the all-in-one because it marries two of our daily functional drivers, banking and mortgage. By combining these two loans together, we can extraordinarily reduce the amount of interest that can accrue over time in comparison to our 30-year fixed mortgage by doing zero different about our incomes, our spending habits. Nothing changes. You're simply taking this kind of older school loan product, which has its value add depending on the circumstances. I'm not saying anything bad about the 30-year fixed, but to answer you about affordability and how can, especially investors, find ways and opportunities within lending that can allow us to move into higher scaling or other properties or access to, this is the product. So banking and mortgage, nothing changes about anything that you're doing today by combining those two things. Deposits, because this is your checking savings, deposits automatically go into the account that you will let sit idle for the vast majority of a month, driving principal balance down. And because this is open-ended revolving simple interest versus closed-ended amortized compound interest, you can greatly diminish the amount of interest that will accrue over time. I'll give you an example because I think that kind of telling the story paints a picture and connects the dots. So I'll give you an example in a second. But in addition to being able to save a tremendous amount in interest, you have an open-ended line of credit now at your disposal. It's liquid, not illiquid. It's now you've created an environment where you have become your own bank, right? No more pre-qualifying to harvest equity, no more closing costs. No more, this is your line of credit for 30 years, by the way, which is a unique feature in the product. So, okay, here's my example, everybody. And I'll leave it with this. And then Jen, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. But this loan product is life-changing for so many, especially real estate investors, because we have those rents. We have that extra income that we can utilize for 29 days out of a 30-day billing cycle before we send anything back out the door. So it can be an extra profound impact on this loan product. So I want you to imagine the following. And the all-in-one is all about speed. The reason in which we're able to save so much interest, if we're going to focus on that value add of the product, is speed. Okay. I may illustrate a point on that in a minute, but I want you to imagine the following. So you have a $100,000 mortgage balance. That's what you owe on your mortgage, just to keep the math easy. You bring in $10,000 a month in income, all sources. So let's just say in my example, that's 5,000 of gross rents and 5,000 of net of everything else. W-2, commission, bonus, alimony, child support, social security, dividends, whatever, retirement. 10 grand is what you've got. Gross rents, because we can use those gross rents before, because we get them before we have to send anything out. Gross rents and net of everything else, that number is 10,000. Our monthly expenses are $9,000 a month. Okay. Day one, month one, 100 grand. I'm just going to keep it easy and say my 10,000 comes in on the first of the month, all of it. Okay. Trust me. 10,000 goes into my checking account, driving my $100,000 balance down by the dollar for dollar. Now I owe $90,000 on that day, right? Simple interest is accruing every single day based on two numbers, the balance and an interest rate, 365 days a year. So my $100,000 was my balance. I drop in my $10,000 of income. That drives it down to $90,000. That's the interest accrual is based on $90,000. I'm not going to touch that $10,000 for any reason for 29 days out of a 30-day billing cycle. Okay. So the interest accrual for 29 days is on a $90,000 balance, not a $100,000 balance. Throughout the month, I need money. I need to pay my bills. I've got my car payment, my credit card payments, my cell phone, my food, my gas, all the stuff, right? So I'm going to use an arbitrage and a credit card of my choosing, most points, rebates, whatever. That card is going to pay for every cent of my $9,000 of expenses. I will not touch my 10 grand. On day 30, because I said 29 days out of a 30-day billing cycle, right? On day 30, I'm going to go online to where my 10 grand has been sitting idle, and I'm going to online bill pay my credit card in full. The $9,000 that I put on my credit card is going to be paid off in full. I have $1,000 left over, right? So days 1 through 29, my balance and interest accruals on 90 grand. On day 30, my balance goes up to 99,000 because I paid that credit card off. So one day of the month, that interest accrual is going to be higher. Now fast forward to day 1, month 2. My outstanding principal balance is 99,000, right? I had $1,000 left over from the month before. Guys, I have 24/7 access to any of the dollars and cents that we're talking about. This is an FDIC insured bank that is housing this loan. Okay. So while I'm doing nothing different than what I've ever been doing, day 1, month 2, 99 grand is the balance. I drop in my $10,000 of income, $89,000 is the interest accrual balance for 29 days, and so on and so forth. So you can kind of see the snowball effect here. There's two compounding interest saved components, daily and then monthly. Okay. That was, I did not expect that I was going to go into all that. You let me roll. So I just went for it. That was a lot.
That was a lot. I'm like, I want to spend like 30 minutes or 45 minutes. We will plan this because I want us to dig into that product. Okay. I started reading a little bit about it and I was like, I need to ask her. I need to ask her. And I know not many people are aware about it, but I understand the world of insurance probably too much for my own good. And I was wondering, does this work like the Infinity? Yeah. And very similar. It does. And I'm like, oh my God. So it's a pretty interesting not for everybody, as you mentioned. This is, you have to 10%, more or less, guys. Here's that threshold generally. Okay. And we'll have to look, but if you have about 10% at the end of the month is what you've got left over, you're probably a good candidate. No. We have to look, but that's the general rule of thumb anyway. But so a year, 2 years, 3 years, you don't have to wait. Today that product is available. So for investors and what may be coming, you have that and that access right now. Now, anything else that may happen, I would say 2 other things.
Interest rates are probably on the run. Okay. Here, be careful to understand that interest rates go down much faster. Excuse me, interest rates go up much faster than they ever come down. So this is probably going to be a slow trickle burn, but I do believe that we're on the other side. We'll start to see some improvement on interest rates. But when you're doing the math, you guys, it's very, very important that it's very largely dependent on the loan size. I mean, even if we get a half a point better in rate, maybe a full percentage point better in rate. Okay. And that's going to take a minute. Do the math. What's the payment difference on $100,000 between 6 and 7%? It's probably $30. It isn't going to be the difference between your accessibility versus not, right? If the deal can't work over $30, you got other problems. So I would say that about the interest rate. And then the other thing is that, so the current administration is talking a lot about removing the conservatorship. Okay, what that means is that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have been under conservatorship since the 0809 crash. It just the U.S. government has kind of contained, and everything is within their control. If they take it from conservatorship and it goes back on the NYSE, right? It's a publicly traded again, et cetera, there would be revenue generated for the US, and it will also provide more options. It's going to open it up. The suits are going to come back out of the woodwork, and we're going to have more options and fair trading. And because Fannie Freddie is really one of the only games in town, unless you look at non-QM products. Now, this is probably a little TMI, but if they will leave the implicit guarantee on Fannie Freddie and take them out of conservatorship, if both of those things happen, then I think we might be in a good place to have more opportunity as investors and more loan products at competitive rates.
That's
what I
right
see.
on. That's right on. And in fact, now that you brought that up, and it's not to get political, let's foresee a little bit the future here, because I was watching something yesterday, and I want to speculate here, right?
Okay.
This is not to be taken for granted, but there's a potential peace deal between our existing president and the Russian president. And it is expected that this treaty or deal could directly impact US real estate, from construction costs and oil to mortgage rates. And they explore, right, the ripple effects of what I call global politics on energy prices,
Sure.
investor confidence, and housing demand. Any thoughts on that? I was like, I need to ask her about this.
I don't know anything about the peace treaty, so I wouldn't speak to that. But yeah, we're intertwined. I mean, global market. What's funny about that is that I am starting to see, and maybe they know something that I haven't necessarily gotten online yet or on board with yet. But there's a lot of we have foreign national products. I'm seeing a lot more foreign national wanting to buy in the U.S. I mean, there's lending products for them. They're not as desirable as if you're a citizen, but I'm starting to see a lot more of that. So maybe they know something, or their government is telling them things that maybe hasn't hit mainstream here yet. I'm good. I think that the markets, if we were to get some positivity that way, I think it'd be hard for me to see an outcome that wouldn't be positive for housing and mortgage. You know what I mean? We need some, it's all about the feel. There's a lot more feel than we give it credit for. We've been talking about data and doing the math, et cetera, but I think we need a few checks in the win column as it relates to foreign policy and politics and stuff. And just as a result of that, I think that markets will respond favorably.
Correct. And I think that a lot of people underestimate the impact. It's not even the action, it's the how investors will react to what's happening. And with that being said, I was reading other few articles too, establishing the challenges that we might encounter with affordability, because the foreigners coming and buying more property. And I also saw that some of the states are already taking some kind of actions to limit this. And the reason why I'm bringing that is one of those things that pretty soon we need to start looking into, from affordability, policy in the states that we're investing, in the counties that we're investing, because these can impact affordability and how we look at real estate. And those are some of the things. So that's why I found that so interesting, because I'm like, okay, it might impact, interest rate, it might impact these other areas. It hasn't happened, but it's always good to start discussing what potentially can happen, right, in our area over here with the housing
Yeah.
real estate. So
Jen, I would say also about affordability, since we're on that topic, as investors, we're kind of insulated. And here's
yeah,
why. As a homeowner, it's a very different mathematical problem, right? This is how much money they have coming in. This is how much they can afford for their housing, et cetera. As investors, we're going to have somebody else making that payment for us or covering that mortgage for us, right? Well, if you need the 1% rule to make it work and you can't find the 1% rule, for those that don't know what that means, if the purchase price is $200,000, the 1% rule would say that you should have $2,000 a month in rents, gross rents. Okay. Now, I think that's fair in some markets and not necessary in others. That's a whole other conversation. But my point is that as investors, there's so many different ways to skin that cat. If it's a single family residence and it's not producing what you need it to produce as a long-term rental, then turn it into a pad split,
yeah.
right? Go find a property that's got 5 bedrooms in it and get, traveling professionals to. There's so many different ways. Affordability for investors really isn't a magnet for success or failure. It's all about how you're going to take that piece of real estate and put it out to work for you. And there's 20 different ways to do that. So don't get
Oh,
stuck on, yeah.
I
Anyway,
love that. I actually teach that in my raising capital class. I call it the USA formula. And what you're talking about is the usage. How do you shift the
yeah,
usage of a property to make it highly profitable?
right,
And it's pretty important that you understand how a lender will look at the business model because it changes the underwriting.
right,
But at the same time, there's so many possibilities on how you can make these house profitable, but we cannot approach it with the same level of thinking that it's being teach traditional, right? A
yeah,
fix and flip is not going to cure, it's not going to make this
totally.
property perform. You have to go beyond that. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. That second level of thinking, what nobody's looking at that I can do. And it's, you have to be more creative,
Right.
more
And
creative.
and dealing, and not to pat myself on the back, but dealing with a lender that's going to show you how to package it. And because we
Yeah.
have such a diverse access of loan products, because you're absolutely right. There are certain loan products that I'll just use the pad split example again, that's not going to fit into there, right? The underwrite is not going to allow you to use 5 leases for a single family residence to qualify. Okay, fine. Then we would move into a DSCR loan, for example, right? We would just pivot and go that way. Now, the return may change a little bit because the interest rate might be a little bit higher, but probably not to the point that it doesn't make sense. So, dealing with a lender that knows what you're about and what you're trying to do is going to be crucial to long-term success. And anyway, that wasn't intended to be a plug for Ridge Lending. It just turned out that way.
It's just flow, but to your point, I mean, I learned this in the hotel
Mm,
industry, right? We were blessed with contracts where we were helping the city to manage
yeah,
different challenges from homeless to judicial system. But because we were under these contracts, now we don't have a historical path for 2 years on this hotel. No traditional lender and even
right.
private equity will touch these hotels until they have a history in the hospitality industry. And so far, we had to pivot into a lease with option to purchase. And we
But
were
you did
willing
it
to do
and you
that.
figured it out. Yeah,
Right.
right.
But to your point, if I didn't have a good relationship with the lender, I would not have an idea. Of course, this
Right.
problem came 1 year before we were almost done with the contract, and we're like, okay, different route.
Right.
Yes.
Think on your
So,
feet
but I mean, we can be talking here all day
forever.
long, and so I have one more question before we wrap.
Okay.
And is when the headlines are screaming fear and the news is painting a dark pessimistic world, what's your best advice for our audience to protect their mindset, stay in the game, and keep that spark alive?
So, ladies and gentlemen, I will just speak for myself. This has been a constant in life, right? At 53 years old, I can't think of a time when there hasn't been something out there distracting or, to different levels or degrees. I just keep my head down, man. I keep focused. I really try to mute the outside distractions, especially the negative ones. And I think I said earlier in talking, I've got a good filter, so I'm lucky that way. I would avoid things that do not bring you positive results or reinforcement. I the noise, it's all it is, gang. It's distraction, and it's intended to be a distraction. They don't want us talking about the things that they don't want to deal with. I mean, right? I'm not going to get political, but it's distraction. So do what you know, get a good team around you of support group like Jen, right? The people that you know and trust, and lean on that and lean into it. I think it doesn't have to be overcomplicated.
Yeah.
Turn it off,
Yeah.
right? I don't know that that's
I
any
love it.
profound bit of advice, but that's how I work.
Yeah, turn it off. Turn it off.
Yeah.
I mean, what better advice in the technology world that means when things are showing that way, turn it off.
I'm going flip phone. I'm not even kidding you. The minute that I have, I'm pulled back enough from my day to day. I'm going to get rid of my smartphone. I will be getting a flip phone. I'll have my computer at home, fine, but I'm going flip phone, man. I'm going to go AAA, right? 22211. I'm going to text you guys. You might, I don't, you remember that, right? The flip phone where you have to
Yes,
text, you have to go.
I got to see it. Yes.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
would be fun. That would be
yeah.
fun. Well, Chili, thank you so much for being with us today. It was a pleasure as always. And yeah, we're looking forward for that next time where we talk about these all-in product. I'm really, really geeking out on it.
I love it. You tell me when and where. Thanks for having me, Jen.
Thank you.
Yay.